Good morning, everybody. Welcome to class this morning. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you all are ready to start another week. As we're getting started today, Just one little reminder, and this will be the last time that I make this announcement, because tomorrow is our IT Advising Day. IT Advising Day is tomorrow, 10 o'clock a.m., room 3200 in the Paxway building at Cleveland Community College. If you are able, please make plans to attend so that you can learn what you need to take in the spring. We have this IT Advising Day every fall, just to make sure everything's on the right track for you as you're getting started. And, we find our students find it very helpful, right? Because for those of you who are starting the program this semester, right, it's your first foray into all of this, so you'll want to make sure that you're on the right path for the spring. And then next year, when you're in your second year, hopefully you'll be getting ready to graduate. So you'll want to make sure that there's no surprises and you'll be ready for graduation. So this is one of those key things that we have every year, every fall, a couple weeks before registration opens, so that you can be prepared to register for spring, know everything that you need to take, and do all that kind of fun stuff. So again, that is tomorrow, room 3200, 10 o'clock a.m. If you are unable to attend, please get in touch with whoever's the primary instructor of your degree area. That would be Ms. Randall for networking, Mr. Cobb for system security or cybersecurity, and then me for the programming and web development folks. So that we can help you get to where you need to be for spring. Today we're talking about Module 6, which Module 6 extends what we learned in Module 5. So Modules 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, right, are all basically our front-end web development type stuff. You're working on the same website that you started in the last module in Module 5. You'll continue that through Module 6, Module 7, Module 8, and you'll finish it up in Module 9. So each time you'll just be adding a little bit more, and changing a few things and working with it here and there until it gets finished after we talk about JavaScript. But we're talking about more HTML stuff this week. With the previous module, we were looking at the HTML skeleton. We were looking at all of these fun little bits and pieces. Now we're looking at some more here with HTML. We're going to be looking at links, lists, and multimedia. And all this kind of stuff is pretty important for us to be working with as we're working with websites, because these are the things that people want to see on websites. We need some way to organize data, which for our scope right now is going to be lists. We need some way to get from one website to another website, which are our links. And we want to display pictures and videos and audio to people, and that's our multimedia, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we're going to start out by having a look at links. And so when we're building a link in HTML, we use our A tag, right? We see our A tag here. A lot of what we're going to be talking about builds on the same stuff that we were talking about previously. So we're, still working with, within the confines of the DOM. We're still using that same basic structure where we have an opening tag and a closing tag. For the vast majority of our tags, we'll actually talk about one today that is a self-closing tag, which means there's only one. Right, so the A tag defines a hyperlink, which is used to link from one page to another page. So the most important attribute of the A element is this href attribute that we'll be adding to it. This href attribute tells it which site it's going to be linking to. Right, and you might be thinking, well, this is a link. Why is it called an A, right? Why is it not called a link tag or an L tag? And there is more purposes than just this one to our A tag. But essentially the A in our A tag stands for anchor. This is our, we can kind of consider this our anchor point. So as we kind of jump to other places, we can use our A tag or our anchor tag as kind of the grounding point on our website as we go to other websites. Now, there is one thing here that we should be talking about that we'll that we'll revisit when we get to images in just a little bit. And that's the idea of cores. C-O-R-S. Cores. Now, cores is cross-origin resource sharing. And when we're talking about cross-origin resource sharing, we're going to see a little bit of that with our links. But we're going to see more of that with our images. Because really our links don't really line up with cores, right? Like, it's just about the data structure. So like, we're leaving one site and we're going to another site. So when we click on a link, we want to make sure that we have the full path to that other site so our browser can make that proper make that proper request and get back that proper response like we were talking about in Module 2. So when we leave off part of the URL, we don't give that full path to our browser to make that request. However, one of the big things that we'll talk about in relation to cores is when it comes to multimedia, right? And when we're talking about multimedia, we need to make sure that we're hosting our multimedia on something that we're able to host our media on, like that we're allowed to use, so that we can do that. So this is something to kind of keep in mind for the time being, this cross-origin resource sharing. And we could start talking about it when we talk about links, because really the link itself is kind of this origin, right? This origin point where we can start kind of talking about this. Our website is a certain origin. Other websites are origins for their material. So when we go from one website to another website, or when we're using resources from one website on another website, we are said to be crossing origins, right? We're going cross-origin for our resource sharing here, which is a pretty important thing, especially when it comes to media, a little bit when it comes to links, right? And so by default, we have some default styling for our links. When we talk about CSS in a couple modules, we'll talk about color and all that kind of stuff. We can change these links to look differently and look however we want them to look. But by default, you see some of the regular link styling here. An unvisited link is underlined in blue. A visited link is underlined in purple. And an active link, or a link that is in the process of being clicked, is underlined and red. So let's create a website and let's add a little link in there. I already have a Replit up and running here. Let me see if I can find the window in my big list of windows that I have up and running here. So I've just created myself a new Replit. Now, one of the things that we might want to do is go ahead and visit the site that we want to link. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to need to use my Cloudinary in a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my Cloudinary at cloudinary.com. We're going to use this in a little bit for our multimedia, so we may as well have it here now. And to get my full path to this URL, I'm just going to highlight it in my URL bar here at the top and copy it. Right, once again, I'm going to highlight it in my URL bar and copy it. Now, one of the important things for this, and one of the reasons why we do this, is that, if you look here, when we highlight this URL, it starts it off with that hypertext transfer protocol, and in this case, it's hypertext transfer protocol secured. In order to make that proper request, to get that proper response, we need that full path that includes the HTTPS. So if you're writing a link and you're not getting the right thing back, that might be one of the first places to look, is that you're including the full URL and including the transfer protocol here. So let's head back over to our HTML. We've got our HTML skeleton here that we're given by default. I'll change the title to be links, lists, and media practice. And let's create an anchor tag here. So we'll start with our A anchor tag, and we need to give it our href attribute. And our href attribute, again, is the site that we want it to go to. So we'll set href equal to the URL of the site that we want to go to. So we just copied that there from cloudinary.com. And so from here, right, we can go ahead and finish off our tags. And between our tags here, that's where we put the text that we want our link to show up as on the screen. So like, maybe we want to include an emoji here or something, right? So we can include an emoji with our emoji keyboard. Let's find a cloud since it's Cloudinary. And let's just copy that cloud, just however you want it to look. That's what you put in between our tags. So we can put that right there like that. And so if we click run now, we can see we have a little list, or we have a little link here on our page. And I'm going to pop it out in a new window just so we can see it here. There's my Cloudinary link. You can see that it's purple here by default because we have visited that site before, right? We just went to it. And if I click this, you can see that it takes me to the Cloudinary website. Now, one of the problems that we see here is that it opens it up in the same page, replacing the page that was open there. I'm going to hit the back button here just so we can see that again, which is typically less than desirable, right? Like, we want our users to not have to struggle when they're working with our website, so we want to make sure that they are able to easily get back to our page just in case they need any more information back there. Now, some of you might know about the middle mouse click button, and if you middle mouse click button, also notice that whenever I click it, it turns red for just that brief period of time, right? Like if I click and hold it, you can see that red. That's that active that we talked about just a few minutes ago. But some of you might know about the middle mouse click, and about the middle mouse click opening links in a new tab, which is nice, right? That's a good thing for us. But we don't want to necessarily force our users to do that. So we can actually make our link open in another tab by default by adding another bit of code, another attribute to our link here. So what I want to do is I want to add a target attribute here. So I want to target. And by default, your target is set to self. So I want to change this target to be _ blank. _ blank. And let me make sure it's in the window there so you can see it nice and big here for us. So I'm going to set my target to _ blank. And back in the day, that used to open it in a new window. But with new modern browsers, target blank sets it to open in a new tab. So if we run our site again, refresh our site in our window here, we can see, and I'll just simply left click it, and we can see that it opens it up in a new tab. That new tab gets focus. And if we want to get back to our old site, we can just close that tab, and nothing's been replaced here. We can still get to where we want to go. So there's our Cloudinary site. We'll be using that in just a minute, so we'll keep that open there. And we have a link here, and we've styled it up a little bit with some emojis, which is pretty cool. So our links are pretty simple, right? And we'll get more practice with our links in just a minute. But, a link is one thing that a lot of people want to be able to make because links are probably, one of the most useful things on websites, right? It's one of the things that we see most often. It gets us from one place to another. Now, if we want to use relative links, we can use those in relation to our website as well, right? So let's make let's make a relative link really quickly. We can do that in our Cloudinary here. All I have to do is make another page. So I'm going to click this Add File button here. And I'm going to create a page called second.html. So now I have a second.html page. I'm just going to take and copy the HTML skeleton out of here into this other page, just so we can Control V to paste, just so we can have something different here. And so we'll call this, we'll change the title here to second page. And we'll just change this body out here. Give it like an H1 here for the second page. Just so we can know that we have something different here. So now we have one site here with 2 pages. Our index.html page being the primary page. So if we loaded up our website, it's always going to load that index.html first, because that's what we've named the file, is the index. The index always goes to the root. So let's make a relative link now, and I'll just put a little break here. Using our BR tag, I'll put a little break in here. And so we'll add another link here to the second page. So let's add an ahref equals. This is going to the second page, so we're going to use a relative link assignment here. So since they're both in the same folder, all I have to do is put the name of the file in there. We'll give it a target of blank just for practice. In this case, since we are on the same site, if we had the same navigation on the other page to get us back to this page, we wouldn't necessarily have to do this. But since we don't, we'll just put it here. And let's add a little something here. Let's just, let's keep using that emoji stuff here. So let's put, we'll just put a little page icon here. And then we'll add some text for the second page, /A. So now if we run this, we see we have both of our links. We see our second link here is now a blue link because we haven't officially visited that second.html page yet. Like, we have the code for it here, but we haven't officially visited that yet. So if we go to our live page here, we see we now have the second page here. If we click that, we can see that it opens the second page for us, and we can close that and be right back to where we were. Which is pretty cool, right? Pretty cool stuff. So we're going to get more link practice in here in just a moment, but I want to go ahead and kind of switch my focus and talk about something else for a few minutes before we get more link practice in. Because I think we can put more links inside of our lists. So our first question here that we have to pose to ourselves is, what exactly are lists? And lists are really a part of everyday life, right? Like, you wake up first thing in the morning, and the first thing you start to do is you start to kind of organize your day in your head. Well, like, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. I need to brush my teeth, I need to take a shower, I need to get dressed, I need to go to work, I need to have the CTI 110 live stream. Every day kind of we wake up and we make these lists, some kind of to-do list, or maybe you're making grocery lists, or maybe you're making, whatever kind of list that you make, right? Maybe you're doing directions to somewhere you haven't been before, and you kind of need to go over turn by turn in your head what's going on there, right? You're making some kind of list for something that you need to do, and you're doing that every single day. And there are all sorts of different types of lists, like, navigational routes, they're turn-by-turn directions. Recipes provide you multiple lists, right? You have both a list of ingredients and a list of instructions on what to do with those ingredients. There's a list for nearly everything, right? And so lists are kind of the most rudimentary way that we structure data, just as human beings, right? So of course we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue using lists online. That's really easy for us to understand why. So when we want to use a list on a website, HTML provides 3 different types to choose from. We have unordered lists, we have ordered lists, and we have description lists. Now we're going to put a pin in description lists for the time being. Right, for the purposes in this class, we're going to use unordered and ordered lists. Description lists we'll save for Web 115 for those of you who are going on with me in the programming and web development degree. So the first thing that we want to do is we need to choose which type of list that we want to use. Or really, if it's appropriate to use a list at all, right? Like if it's not a list of items, that sort of data structure, we don't need to use a list at all. And, what type of list we want to use comes down to the content of that list and the most semantically appropriate option for displaying that content. Right? And so for our purposes here, we have unordered lists and we have ordered lists. And the purposes of each of these links should be kind of obvious to you. Unordered and ordered. Do things need to be done from this list, or do you need to have, is it important for this list to be in a particular order? If no, we use an unordered list. If yes, we use an ordered list. So the decisions that we're making here are incredibly easy. And inside of each list item, you can put any kind of element you would like. Text, images, even other lists. Right? And that's pretty cool. So we'll start off looking at unordered lists. Right? An unordered list is simply just a list of related items whose order doesn't matter, right? Like unordered lists. And in order to create an unordered list, right? In order to create an unordered, we need to start with our UL block level element. So we have a UL tag, and this UL tag is denoting that this structure in our DOM is a list. So we have an opening UL tag and a closing UL tag. And to keep our lists sort of standardized, right, we can use LI tags inside of a UL tag. And these LI tags are list items. And so, hint, hint, all lists have items, whether it's an unordered list or an ordered list, which, kind of makes it easy to, do the ordered lists after we've done the unordered lists. So by default, most browsers add a little bit of vertical margin and left padding to the unordered list element, and they precede each list item element with a solid dot. Now this is stuff that we can change using CSS. We'll talk more about that in the next level class in the Web 115. We get into that a little bit more. But this solid dot is called a list item marker, and it can be changed using CSS. It can be changed to anything that you want it to be. You can change its color, you can change its, you can change what it is, right? Like you can make it into an emoji or whatever you want to do, right? It's really flexible. You can change that margin, you can do whatever you want. Right, so we see an example of an unordered list here. Right, and we see this structure. So if we're working with our DOM elements here, like we talked about previously, we have a nice container here. That is our unordered list, and that states that everything inside of this container is part of this unordered list. And of course, everything that's in an unordered list has to be in a list item. And so we see 3 list items here, just listing out some colors. Orange, green, and blue. So let's head back over to our demo example, and let's work with that just a little bit and make ourselves an unordered list. And we'll do this with a little bit of link practice as well. So let's just add ourselves an H1 here just for practice, and we'll add a little title here, like here's some links. And we'll create our unordered list. And we're getting a little congested in here, so let's just add some line breaks here just to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room as we're coding here. So our unordered list we have here. Just to make our lives a little bit easier, I'll go ahead and close that unordered list tag just so I don't forget it. And we'll create some list items here in our tag. So we'll create an ahref equals https://www.google.com. And so that'll be, we'll target that blank, target equals underscore blank. And we'll put Google as the text and we'll /a that. So that's one link. So let's run that. Let's see it. Here's some links. Here's some links. Obviously, I've been to Google before, right? So it's purple. If we click that, it opens up in a new tab, and there's Google for us. While we're here, let's go ahead and grab ourselves some other URLs, like maybe bing.com. Let's grab that. We'll put it in our list here. So we need to make sure we close our previous list item. Before we start our new list item. We'll add our link to Bing in here. We need to make sure that we're doing everything we less than, greater than, all that kind of fun stuff. Target equals blank. This is Bing. And there we go. We'll run that. And now we have 2 items in our list. And now that we have a couple items in our list, it's a little easier to see how our list kind of works out here. Like you can see based on these links that we put in up here, we can see that we're moved in just a little bit from the left here, moved over to the right just a little bit. That's that margin we were talking about earlier. So we have a little bit more margin here, a little bit more breathing room, so we can see this visual separation between what are our links versus what are our everything else. Right, and we can see these dots for our list style type. And the more that we add to this list, the more of that is generated, right? So just for the sake of time here, because we do have a lot to do, I'm going to make sure that I close this second link. And then we'll just copy and paste these a couple times just to make our list just a little bit longer. Just so we can see it in action. And believe it or not, this is kind of the, when you see these navigation bars on websites, this is actually one of the ways that we can do that is using an unordered list. If we use more of our semantic tags, like our menu or our nav, which is the more modern way to do that, they also use list items inside of them. So when we're making a menu across the top, we'll use our menu semantic tag, but we'll put list items in it, and then we'll style the list items to look like a menu, right? Which is pretty cool. So now we're starting to kind of fill this out a little bit. We can see this data organized structure here, which is pretty good. So now that we have a list of links, that's an unordered list. Let's take a look at a ordered list. So our ordered list is essentially exactly the same as our unordered list. It just has a few different things about it. We're going to use an OL tag instead of a UL tag because that's a ordered list versus an unordered list. And instead of a dot, it's going to use a number because it's an ordered list. So we're going in order. Right, so let's just check that out. Here's what an example of that looks like, right? We're using directions here as our ordered list example. But we can do that kind of in any way that we want to do that. You know, anything that needs to be in any kind of order. If you're doing directions, if you're doing instructions, if you're doing maybe like a top 10 list, right? All of these have their benefits in using an ordered list. So speaking of top 10 lists, I think that might be a fun one to do on our sample site. Let's create ourselves a little room to work. And let's create an ordered list. So we're going to use our OL tag this time. But the rest of the structure is going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to go ahead and close my OL tag. And I'm going to put some list items inside of it. Now, let's put ourselves an H1 up here. Just to have a little structure to our website. And we'll call this top 5 favorite veggies. And we'll just make a little list of our top 5 favorite veggies. Right, so we'll use an ordered list for that, just to put it in order. And we'll put some list items here in our ordered list. Li, maybe a carrot, Li, maybe a tomato. You know, tomatoes or fruit, whatever you want to do, you know, that's fine with me. We'll put it in our list here, doesn't matter. Maybe an onion. Right, we're just throwing stuff in a list here. Li. Maybe some celery. And let's round that off with, I don't know, let's say a squash. Why not, right? And so with our top 5 here, we're imagining that the order is important, even though we just kind of pulled these vegetables just off the top of our heads. Doesn't really matter for our purposes here. We're pretending the order is important. So we can see here the structure is basically exactly the same as our unordered list. The only difference here is that we're using OL tags instead of UL tags. So when we run this, we get another little list here, and we can see that we have our top 5 favorite veggies. And they're ordered number 1 to 5. We can see we still have that margin added to us by default, and all that kind of fun stuff. Now, as we're structuring ordered lists, there might be some special things that we need. So there are a few little attributes that are kind of important to us. So for example, we have our start attribute, right? By default, we start a list at 1. We start an ordered list at 1. But if we want to start it somewhere else, then we can use our start attribute inside of our opening OL tag. And the start attribute only accepts an integer value, even though our ordered lists may use different numbering systems. So if we look back here, right, maybe I want this to be my top 10 favorite veggies. But maybe I want to put a paragraph here in the middle, like the previous veggies are my most favorite and have been for a long time. However, the following veggies are more recent big time players in my favorite veggies. Or just something, you know, whatever, right? Like, we have this top 10 list. We're going to separate it into 5 and 5 and put this paragraph in the middle. Now, if we do this, what we would want to do here is we'd want to create another ordered list here. And we can put some more veggies in here, like, oh, maybe this is a shallot. And maybe we have a radish. Maybe we have okra, let's say. Why not? We're just throwing stuff in here. Maybe this is a... you know what? Zucchini is too hard to spell early on a Monday morning, so let's change something else. Let's make it... oh, I don't know. Let's throw a potato in here. And let's throw... broccoli in here. Why not? And we'll close our ordered list. So now we have 2 ordered lists, but we've started a second ordered list. Right, so when we start that second ordered list, it starts back over at 1 because our ordered lists always start at 1. Well, if we add the start attribute and set our start equal to 6, when we run that now, we see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right, which is really great. Even though we've put that little paragraph in the middle that kind of separates our list out. That's awesome. Now, you might be thinking, well, you said this is a top 10 list. Top 10 lists aren't typically numbered from 1 to 10. They typically go the other way, from 10 to 1, from least favorite to most favorite. So how would we fix that? Well, we do have a reversed attribute. And so when we use our reversed attribute, that allows us to reverse our list. So anything that went from 1 to, say, 5 or 1 to 10 gets reversed and goes 5 to 1 or 10 to 1. Right? So this is a Boolean attribute, which means that it's only true or false. And by default, it's false. Right? If our reversed attribute is not in there, then it won't be reversed. So in order to add it here, all we have to do is just add our reversed keyword. And we run that. Now that we've done that on our first list here, we see that's listed from 5 to 1. Now what we might want to do in this case is change our start. Put our start up here. Now we see that we're starting it at 6 though. So it's going from 6 down to 2. So we need to change that start to be from 10. So now we're going to go from 10 down to 6. And we'll just put a reversed in our other list. And we'll add a little bit of something in our paragraph here just so it makes more sense. So they rank higher as my favorite. Boom. So now things are going from 10 to 6, 5 to 1, as we would expect a top 10 list to be kind of structured. Which is pretty cool. And really, that's lists in a nutshell, right? Like, that's the vast majority of things that you'd want to do with a basic list. The only other thing that we might want to talk about is nested lists, where we put a list inside of a list. But I don't think you have to do anything with that in your project. So we'll just skip right over that. We'll just skip right over that and not worry about that. We'll do that in our next level course. For those of you who keep going on with me to Web 115 in the spring. So from here, we'll skip right into media. Moving real fast today. So the ability to include images, audio tracks, videos, inline frames. Not talking about inline frames this time. We'll talk about it in the spring, Web 115. With websites has been around for a long time, right? Images have basically been the easiest thing to add. But traditionally, audio and video has been really hard to add until more recently. Right, with HTML5, the ability to add audio tracks and videos to a website that don't belong to that website is a lot easier. And so we can work with that, right? Like we have this much easier, much more improved way that we can deal with this with HTML. The first thing that we'll do is we'll start off by talking about images. So to add images to a page, we use the IMG inline element. And this is the very first self-containing tag that we've talked about. Right? The IMG element is a self-containing or empty element, which means that it doesn't wrap any other content and it only exists as a single tag. And there is one attribute in our HTML that we need to make sure that we include in our source element, or in our IMG element, and that's our source attribute. And the source is the URL to the server where that picture is being hosted. And so what we see here, we have two examples here. The first example is our image that's being hosted on the same website that you're in, or that you're on. So if it's in the same folder, you can just add the name of the image. If it's in a different website, which for us it's going to be Cloudinary, right? If it's on your Cloudinary, you have to use the complete path, because just like with that URL, when we were making our links earlier, it has to make that request and get that response, right? So we see this here. We also have to make sure that our link has the file name and the file extension on the end of it. Right, so one of the things that you might be tempted to do is just take and find this kind of link just for any image on Google and use that link from there. Right, like if I want to go to Google or something, I might be tempted to Google something like cool dog. Find an image for a cool dog. Like that dog there looks like a really cool dog. And I might try to find like the URL that they have on their site for that, which is here. And try to use that in my site, right? From this other website here. I might be tempted to do that, but I should not do that, right? For multiple reasons. One is that this site, in this case it's from parade.com, they're paying for the hosting for this image. Right? So every time this image is downloaded, it's downloaded from their servers. And so they pay, however much it costs for the bandwidth for this image to load on whomever's computer. Right? Which is all well and good when it's their own website. When it's somebody else's website that they're paying for because they're using a link to this other resource, that's not as good, right? Like I don't want to pay for other people to use my stolen image. Right? And this is where that CORS comes into place, that cross-origin resource sharing, which is the second big thing, other than, costing other people money, which is unethical, is that a lot of times it just simply won't work. Right? Like you might see it on your end because you have the picture cached in your browser memory, but the users that come to your website won't see it. They'll just see a broken image because the origin of the image is being blocked from CORS. They're not allowing the cross-origin resource sharing because they want to save them that money. So that's one of the reasons why we use a site like Cloudinary. Because that's what Cloudinary is designed for. Cloudinary is a CDN, a content delivery network. And we can have an account here. And I'm going to move this off of this page for just a minute while I log into it, and then I'll move it back. So here's our Cloudinary. Looks like they have a conference coming up. And this site is super cool. Right, because they let us store different types of media for use on our websites. And so since we're using Cloudinary's resources, we don't have to worry about using our own resources, which is good. They provide us a lot of good resources on their free plan. And it's going to kind of offload image and media downloading from our own server, so it's going to save us a little bit of money. Right, so that's why we use something like this. Now we can go into our media library. Right, we got a new folder link up here at the top. I can create a new folder. I can call this CTI 110 online demo. We can save that. Now we have a new folder here. I can double click that folder to get into it. And now, as you can see here, all I have to do is drag and drop assets. So one of the places that I like to go to is NASA, because you can get free media resources, copyright free, right? Because they are, it's a government organization that's paid for by tax money. So the things that they release like this is public domain. So I can go to nasa.gov/media resources and get free stuff to use here. And I can go into their galleries and into their image galleries and get myself a video or a picture to start ourselves off with. We'll click on that link there to go to images.nasa.gov, and we'll just find ourselves a cool picture. Like, this is a really cool picture. And so we can just download it. And we can choose here whether to download small, medium, or large, or original. I'm going to go ahead and download large, big picture, right? Because I want to make a point with it. So I'm going to right-click, save image as, and just save it to my downloads folder. So now I can pull up my downloads folder. Downloads. We have my image here that I just downloaded. And I can just drag the image right into Cloudinary. And here's where the real power of Cloudinary comes in handy for us. Like, one of the things that we can see here is this name is kind of weird. Right? We can click this manage link here, and we can start to work with this image, right? Like, we can start to do various things to work with our image. We can have different types of editing here. We can look at the metadata if there is any metadata. We can add metadata of our own. We can do some analysis on it with some free tools, which is pretty cool. Up here at the top, you can see that when I hover over that name, I get a little bar that looks like I can edit it. It's because I can. I can change it into something like, I can call it rockets. And that's going to rename it. And I can just go ahead and click this link, click this chain link looking icon here to copy the URL. Now we can put this into our site. So down here at the bottom, I can put my IMG. We can add our SRC attribute. We can set that equal to the link to our CDN. And this is a self-closing tag, so we don't need a closing IMG tag. What I like to do for self-closing tags, just to show that they're self-closing, is to put the slash before the greater than symbol there. And now we can see that we will have our image on our site, but we'll see that there's a problem. Because remember, we downloaded that image large. So it's enormous. Right? It is huge. That's probably way bigger than we want it to be for our site. You can change the size of an image using CSS. However, my recommendation for you is in most cases, don't do that. Right? Like if you know that you want it to be a certain size, right? Meaning that you don't necessarily want it to be dynamic, you want it to be a specific size. Go ahead and edit that image beforehand so it's smaller. Because if you use CSS to resize the image, it's still using that entire large image. Right? Like if we look at this image on our hard drive, we can right-click it and we can see, we can see the size there, but you can right-click it and see other information. It's 486 kilobytes, right? We can look at our properties here, see it again. We can see that it's 486, 485, 488K, right? Which is actually not crazy large, but that's the size of the download that you're making happen. And since 80% of people visit websites on mobile phones, you might want to save their data just a little bit by having a smaller image. So if you know that you want your image to be smaller, we can transform it. Let's transform it. We don't need it to be this big. We don't need it to be 1648 by 1920. We need it to be a lot smaller. We can just slide this width and height slider, and that's going to make it smaller for us. So now if we check that out, we save this image. We can just save it as, put it in our downloads folder. That image is only 35K, right? So we're making our user download something a whole lot smaller. And I did that from right here inside of Cloudinary as fast as I possibly could. You can also see that I have a crop tool here, right? That I have a quality override. And I can just copy this to my clipboard here with the little copy to clipboard icon here in the lower right corner. And now I can put that link in place. And we get a much smaller image. So by default, if we know our image that we want it to be smaller, we just make it smaller using our software. And this software for online software is pretty robust. Like if we click more options here, we can see we have all sorts of other stuff. We have various things here. Look and feel here gives you some filters that you can put on it. Like I can click Cartoonify and refresh preview. and it gives it that crazy filter, and it all just happens right here within Cloudinary. And so if I get one, right, you can see it change this link a little bit, and I can just copy the clipboard here. Right, and so we can see things like, oh, blur faces, blur region, brightness, multiply, morphology, make transparent, which might be useful for some of you. You know, if you have an image that has a background and you don't want it to have a background, it's a little rough here just because it's a full color picture. But if it was a graphic that had like a white or a black or any kind of solid color background versus the front, you can automatically make it transparent, which is pretty cool. All sorts of options here for you to get in and play around with. And after you do them, you just copy them to clipboard and paste them into your site, which is awesome. Now, another thing that we want to talk about with images is our alt text, and this is for individuals who use a screen reader, right? Obviously, if you're blind or you can't, you're visually impaired, it's going to be tough to see a picture, right? So we use alt text to kind of describe the purpose. We want to convey the message that we want our user to get out of the image. When we get into Web 115 in the spring, we cover this in deep depth because we actually do this more in with our media section, and we have a whole accessibility module where we talk about stuff. So we'll put a pin in this and kind of save it for the future. And we are running long on time, so let's go ahead and talk about adding audio. So HTML5 provides a quick way to add audio to a website by the way of the audio element. And so our audio element accepts a source specified by the source attribute. So we have with our new audio style, we have a source element that goes inside of our audio element. And so our audio and video look very similar, right? And our audio is not a self-closing tag. It has an opening and a closing. Now, by default, in order to get our controls here, we have to add a controls Boolean attribute so you can actually see the controls. And we'll see why that's important here in just a minute. All right, let's see if we can get any. Let's see if we can get some audio here from NASA, which we should be able to do. Let's see, we'll just do that. We'll do that. We'll just type in, like, I don't know, space. So we can look for some audio here from NASA. All kinds of stuff. Let me unmute my desktop so you can hear one of these. Like, a lot of these look like podcasts or something, which is, just fine. Let's check out this one. It's called Mars is Hard. Let's hear it. It's 46 minutes long. Let's just hear it.
Of the official podcast of the NASA Johnson Space
I
Center.
missed my unmute button.
This is episode 53. Mars is hard. Here's why.
Okay, so we can see we got some audio there, just like we did with our image. We can download it. I'm going to download the small version of this one. From here, I can just right-click, save audio as, and save it to my desktop. And just like before, we can just drag it right into our Cloudinary folder. So from our downloads, I can find my audio, drag it right in. And now I have my audio file here. And in this case, I'm just going to click the link to copy the URL. So I'm going to add my audio tag, AUDIO. I'm going to close my audio tag, AUDIO. And for the time being, I'm going to forget on purpose to put in that controls boolean. In between there, I'm going to add my source. And let me just zoom in right quick here. Source src equals that, which is the audio that we got. And let's see, I think that's probably going to be good enough for us. So let's run this. And actually, we need to finish our source tag here, so close our source tag. And by default, you'll notice we don't see anything. There's nothing there. That's because we didn't add those control tags, right? We said we were going to do that on purpose. So I'm going to add controls here, and then I'm going to run it again. So now if I go down here, I see, whoop, look at there. There's my audio, and you can see it's 46 minutes and 16 seconds. It's that podcast length, right? So I know I probably did it right here. So I'll turn my desktop audio back on again so we can hear this.
Houston, we have a podcast. Welcome to the first episode of the second year of the official podcast of the NASA.
Awesome. That works, right? So now we have audio on our website. And so when we add video, let's just move right into adding video, because we are getting a little overtime today. When we add video in the same way, except now our audio tag becomes a video tag. So let's head back to NASA. Instead of audio this time, let's look for videos, and let's look for, let's say, Mars, right, and see what we can get on that. And we've got some cool looking videos here. This looks like a fun one. Let's check it out. The Mars Sample Return Mission Concept Media Reel. And so you can see that it's got all sorts of stuff in it. If we kind of scroll through it, we can see the different parts of our video, which is cool. We'll download this, and we'll download the small file. From here, we can right-click. We can save video as, and this video doesn't have any audio, so we can just save it right to our computer. Drag it straight into our Cloudinary. It'll upload. We give it just a couple seconds to upload here. Now we have that video. We can copy that link, and we can add it in. So one of the things is that you might have seen it on websites before, where you have a nice big video in the background, right? Like the Cleveland Community College website has that nice big video in the background where it's auto playing. So you can do that with a video like this, right? Like you just kind of layer your files and do this various other stuff. And so you don't need controls to display your video, right? So if I just add my video and I add a source and give it an src and paste in there the URL, close that source, close that video, we see by default we get a little video here, right? But we can't do anything with it, right? There's no controls here. Well, one of the things we could do is we could add autoplay, an autoplay Boolean attribute here. So if we add an autoplay Boolean attribute, it'll start to run by default. Perhaps. Probably trying to load. We can also add a controls attribute. Right, so if we add a controls attribute, now we can see that it is auto playing. It started playing by default, but we also have our controls here to start it and stop it. If we're gonna put it just on a website to display, we're probably not going to use those controls, or probably not going to autoplay it. We're just going to use the controls and let our users start it and stop it, right? So we can go through there. If you want to loop it and make it run over and over again, you can add your loop boolean and all that sort of stuff. Now let's say, though, for whatever reason, the user's browser, even though it's 2021 and all browsers support it and they should support it, let's say it doesn't load the video or it doesn't load the audio for some reason, you might want what we call a fallback. So in between the audio and the video, underneath the source tag, I might just add a little bit of text like, your browser does not support the audio tag. And the video one, I might add, your browser does not support the video tag. And we call these fallbacks. Right? So if for whatever reason the audio or the video fail to load, it'll display that message to them instead of the audio and video. Now if we refresh here, we can see that we have all these elements here and we don't see that text. But we also see our images, our audio, and our video displaying a little differently than everything else. Right? And that's because we can see them kind of just sliding right in line with one another. That's because these aren't block elements like everything else are. Like everything else is on this page, right? Our links are block elements, our H1s are block elements. By default, our images, our audio, and our video are not block elements. But I had to keep my eye on my little nephew for this weekend, and he likes to watch Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. So this is our secret. This is our secret tool, right? This is going to be a tool that becomes more important to us later. This understanding that our images, our audio, and our video is not a block element. So if we were going to be working with it with, say, CSS, we have to turn it into a block element. So that's something that we'll put in our back pocket and we'll save it for the next module. That's all that I have for you for today. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. I'm going to hang out in the chat for just a couple minutes now, just in case anybody here with me live has any questions. If you're watching the recording later on and you have some questions, feel free to email me. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
The Mars 2020 rover will initiate a long sought-after mission of returning Martian rocks and soil to the Earth for further study.